Welcome to How I Built My Fundraising Consultancy, the stories behind the people driving results in the nonprofit sector.
The primary technique I used was to research online job searches, announcements that came directly from the nonprofits that were looking for frontline fundraisers and fundraising managers. And what I would do is, after 3 or 4 months of learning about the announcement, hopefully having given them time to hire somebody and get them on board, I would reach out and ask, so what's your plan to train your new hire? And begin a conversation like that.
A quick announcement. As a listener of the podcast, we are making the Engagement Fundraising audiobook available to you free of charge. Just go to imarketsmart.com/exclusive-podcast-offer. As a thank you for listening, we wanted to give everyone free access to Greg's Engagement Fundraising audiobook that you can get on Audible or Apple Books for $15. Once again, just visit imarketsmart.com/exclusive-podcast-offer. That's imarketsmart.com/exclusive-podcast-offer. Thanks for listening to the podcast, and we hope you enjoy Greg's book. My interview today is with Dan Shephard, who has branded himself as the Frontline Fundraiser. Dan focuses on teaching fundraisers how to have a conversation with donors about charitable gift planning. He's been running his business close to 11 years and has a wealth of experience. Without further delay, here's my interview with Dan. Welcome to the podcast, Dan.
Hi, Tim.
So first off, can you kind of introduce yourself and your consultancy?
The name of my business is the Shephard Group, although I brand myself as the Frontline Fundraiser. What I do is teach and coach frontline fundraisers, and what I teach them is charitable gift planning.
So how are you different from traditional consulting? You mentioned teaching is a heavy component of what you do.
I really made a conscious choice when I started the Shephard Group several years ago to focus on what I thought was really important and something that I do best. So I'm a teacher and a coach, and I teach one subject. I teach charitable gift planning. Now, I'll do a little bit of consulting, but specifically in the gift planning space. For example, helping my clients review, sometimes create their gift acceptance policies, designing their how to give web pages and marketing materials. But I don't do campaigns. I don't do board development, all those traditional consulting things. I'm very focused on doing what I do as well as I can.
And why did you decide to focus on charitable gift planning?
Well, I know this sounds a little tongue-in-cheeky, but it's simply because that's where the big gifts live. Based on my experience over a 30-plus year career, and I've worn the major gift officer hat and the planned gift officer hat, I came to the conclusion that when you're sitting across the coffee table from a future donor, the work's all the same. What I'm doing across that coffee table is helping them plan their gifts. And I realized that too many fundraisers leave too many gifts on too many tables by limiting the scope of what they do. So I decided I wanted to help them stop doing it that way.
Okay, so in the planning phase, it's open to, if you're able to do a major gift a year from now, that's great, or a planned gift after your time. It doesn't really matter. It's helping a donor plan their future of giving.
That's really well put. I teach my students that when you go into almost any relationship, with very few exceptions, you don't know what the gift plan you'll discover is going to be. It might be an outright gift plan. It might be a testamentary gift plan. It might be a life income gift plan. The job is to find the gift.
Yeah. So what have been some of your favorite moments as a teacher over the years?
Tim, that's a really fun question. I think about a student who told me she got her biggest ever gift. It was a $5 million commitment, and she specifically cited the relationship building skills I had taught her. There have been several who said they're scrapping their old transactional fundraising habits to embrace my donor-centered way of working. And I think the most exciting thing was recently hearing from one of my clients, the director of gift planning at the Smithsonian Institution, that for the fiscal year they recently ended, their deferred gift totals were triple what they had been doing in recent years. And that felt terrific.
Yeah.
And they're still counting their outright results to find what specific outright gifts they can attribute to the training that they've been taught. So I'm hoping for even better results.
And with the students you take on, do they work directly for nonprofits? Are the other consultants looking to work with a bunch of nonprofits, or what's kind of the market for that?
I look entirely at fundraising professionals who are working for nonprofits.
Okay. And then this has always been your approach as far as the Shephard Group?
It has. A couple of decades ago, I thought I'd hang out a traditional consulting shingle, and I learned then two things that are still valid. Don't go into a market that's already saturated, which it was, and which it remains, and make sure you're sufficiently capitalized, because it's going to take you, if you're lucky, about 3 years to become self-sufficient. So I decided not to do that and decided to focus on what I think I'm very good at, and that's teaching. And I learned the teaching, interesting, across coffee tables, explaining to my donors how they could make their gift plans. And I realized I was pretty good at that. All I do is teach other fundraisers how to do the same thing.
And when did you come up with the name, the Frontline Fundraiser?
Well, I didn't come up with that. It's a phrase I'd heard for a number of years in professional conversations, and it resonated with me. What I like is that it's not a restrictive label like major gift officer or director of planned giving. It's very inclusive and it's donor-centered. I define a frontline fundraiser as the staff professional who, regardless of job title, engages with the few of your donors who make the lion's share of your organization's gifts. Those are the people I want to teach, and those are the skill sets I want to teach them.
And how many students do you like to take on at a single time?
Well, it varies because I teach both live and virtually. I do a seminar and workshop series in partnership with John Brown Limited. It's called Conversations and Contributions. We teach that to nonprofit clients in cohorts of no more than about 20 students. So most of our clients are large nonprofits, universities, the Smithsonian I already mentioned, and we want to limit that simply so that we're only working with a small number of clients, a small number of students at a time, to make sure that everybody gets some personal attention. And then I also teach virtually. I do a number of tutorials that's done using tools like the telephone, Zoom, freeconferencecall.com, and I've managed up to 8 or 10 students at a time doing that.
And where'd you get your start in the fundraising world?
I cut my fundraising teeth in the performing arts. My first job was as the development director for the Fulton Opera House in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. And what I learned there is if you can raise money for the arts, you're a fundraiser.
How has your business changed over the past a little over 10 years now?
Well, it's gotten a little easier because I stuck at it and built some credibility and improved my own teaching skills. So the biggest change is that I'm not having to market and sell as much as I get to schedule training sessions. I'm focused on doing the work now. I had to earn that, and there's no shortcut to it. It just took time and a lot of grinding.
And what was the grinding? What was involved in doing that?
Well, getting my name out there, letting people know, first of all, what I wasn't doing. I wasn't going to run capital campaigns. I wasn't going to do board development workshops, that I was going to teach them and their frontline fundraising colleagues, and then figuring out who among the thousands of nonprofits I needed to talk with about that. When I started, the primary technique I used was to research online job searches, announcements from listservs, announcements that came directly from the nonprofits that were looking for frontline fundraisers and fundraising managers. And what I would do is, after 3 or 4 months of learning about the announcement, hopefully having given them time to hire somebody and get them on board, I would reach out and ask, so what's your plan to train your new hire? And begin a conversation like that. And it was a lot of heavy lifting. It was tedious. And I just kept at it and kept at it and kept at it.
That's, interesting approach. Yeah. finding brand new hires and making sure they succeed, right?
Yeah, it really was. Once I had some successful students who'd have a little bit of time after the training to go out and prove that it worked, then I used their testimonials and the referrals. I was doing a lot less, eventually, cold calling, and a lot more responding to inquiries based on referrals. And of course, I think that's any consultant's goal, to stop having to spend money on marketing and time on selling and focus on doing the work.
And that's where the business is today. You're pretty much solely in referral mode, or do you still have to do some legwork?
I'm doing indirect marketing now. I'm very active on both LinkedIn and Facebook. I participate in a lot of LinkedIn conversations. I participate in a number of professional groups, the Association of Fundraising Professionals, the National Association of Charitable Gift Planners, the Council for the Support and Advancement of Education CASE. I blog, I publish articles, I participate in conversations. Fortunately, a number of my former students see those things and they respond and they participate and they comment, and it gets other people's attention. But it took me a while to get to that.
So what inspired you to make this switch from working directly for nonprofits to starting your own business?
Frustration, an ongoing realization that for decades, the average time on a job for a frontline fundraiser, again, regardless of job title, was roughly 18 months. That's a statistic that has held true for decades. And although it's certainly not the only factor, I think a big contributing factor to that is that people are not onboarded well, they're not oriented well, they're certainly not trained well. And I thought I had some ideas to fix that and improve it.
Yeah. So you mentioned that it takes a good 3, maybe 4 years to become self-sufficient, I think is the term you used. What were those couple beginning years like? How much of a financial investment did you need to make in yourself to do this?
Aside from the creation of my e-learning course, which I haven't mentioned, and it's something that I'm proud of, I created an online e-learning course. The current iteration of it is called the 4 Decisions Online. And that was expensive. That was several tens of thousands of dollars, but it's paid off eventually, both directly and indirectly, because I use it with my tutoring. But aside from that, the money that I spent, probably $20,000 or so, was focused on creation of my website. I hired a branding consultant early on, created some marketing materials, stationery, all the usual things that you might imagine. It's just that my message wasn't, I'm a consultant. My message in all of those things was, I'm a teacher.
Is there anything you would have changed if you're doing it all over again as far as the initial steps of starting your business?
Probably not. I don't know that I'm smart enough to have figured out what worked or what didn't. Those traditional things that people need to do to start just about any business probably don't change that much from consultant to consultant, from teacher to teacher. So in hindsight, I don't know that I'm qualified to say I do anything significantly different. I'd find a time machine if I could, but good luck with that.
And is it just yourself with the business?
Well, with the virtual work, it's just me. I'm the teacher, the trainer, the tutor. I mentioned earlier my partnership with John Brown Limited. I work very closely with my good colleague, Craig Smith, on the Conversations and Contributions seminar and workshop series. We're having a lot of fun developing that.
And what would you advise someone wanting to take the leap to starting their own business? Any advice for them?
Oh, yeah. Be sure you're capitalized to endure 3 pretty dry years. One thing that helped me, since I was doing some things virtually, I didn't have to take days off work to travel. I was able to start part-time while I still held down a full-time job. Of course, I talked with my immediate supervisor, and he understood that I was doing some things. And the deal was simply, if I continue to produce, trust me. And I worked for a guy who trusted me. You've got to capitalize and build a strong professional network, test ideas with friends, especially the people you might hope will become future clients. I created what I call my brain trust. It was a group of 5 or 6 people who I regard highly. And anytime I wanted to do something new, or anytime I was feeling particularly frustrated, I'd reach out to those people and get their good advice.
And what's your typical schedule like these days?
For me, it probably will sound different from a lot of people who are a little younger than me, who are trying to build consulting companies. This is my quasi-retirement job. It's sort of part-time at this point in my life. I suppose if I had figured out how to do what I do 20 years ago, I might have taken the plunge and approached it differently. But I enjoy, and I think this is important not only for consultants and teachers, but for people who are working full-time. I enjoy some quiet time where I'm not so intensely busy 10, 12 hours a day, where I can maybe finish an online tutoring session, make some notes, give my students some feedback, and then sit down quietly for a few minutes afterward and decide, what did I do well and what do I need to pay some attention to? When I come back from a seminar, I'll often spend a couple of days thinking about, how did that seminar go? What portions need some attention? Thinking time to recharge one's batteries and do some self-analysis. It shouldn't be a luxury. It's vitally important. And of course, it's easy for me to say because in my semi-retirement, I have that time. But for anybody, whether they're aspiring to consulting work or whether they're still working for a nonprofit, I can't recommend strongly enough finding some quiet time just to think and let things gestate in your brain. It's just remarkable when you give yourself that opportunity.
You mentioned LinkedIn earlier. How do you approach LinkedIn in a way where you find that you're using your time wisely and efficiently, engaging in the right kind of activities on that network?
I think there are 2 things especially. First is that I've been pretty selective about who I want to connect with. 90% of my LinkedIn connections are people in the nonprofit space, other consultants and vendors, people who I admire, who have credibility, but mostly students, aspiring students, representatives of the organizations I've served. So I really focus who I choose to communicate with on LinkedIn. And then I've selectively joined several LinkedIn groups so that I can participate in very focused and pertinent conversations. And I try to avoid any distractions from those things. It's my professional social network, and I try to really keep it honed in on what I'm trying to do and the messages I'm trying to send. And then, of course, I publish on LinkedIn. I have got on my LinkedIn page, I think more than 80 articles that I've published over the last several years. And I try to publish about every other week, whether there's something else going on or not, just staying active and putting my name out there and hoping that it gets some people's attention.
And where do you find the inspiration for the articles that you write there?
Well, a lot of them come from LinkedIn, from other posts, from contractors, from vendors, from, say, the National Association of Charitable Gift Planners. They might publish an article or comment on something that's been produced by another party. I'll find it pertinent to what I'm doing, and I'll comment on that, or sometimes step outside LinkedIn and write independently, create an article on the topic, and then post that on my page. This episode is brought to you by us here at MarketSmart and Engagement Fundraising by Greg Warner. In this quick break, I want to remind everyone to go to imarketsmart.com/exclusive-podcast-offer to download the Engagement Fundraising audiobook for free. This offer is only available to listeners of the podcast. It's our way of saying thank you for listening, and we really hope you enjoy the book. Once again, go to imarketsmart.com/exclusive-podcast-offer to take advantage of this promotion, available only to listeners of the podcast. Now, back to the episode. Well, with that, let's get to the lightning round, just a series of quick questions and answers.
What's the best piece of business advice you've ever received?
Focus on no more than 3 things and do them exceedingly well. And I've learned since I got that advice 20 years ago, fewer than 3 is probably better.
What book would you recommend to those getting started?
The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by the late Stephen Covey. It's more than just a professional business guide. It really is about living effectively and living meaningful life. It's my professional Bible.
What's your favorite personal productivity habit?
Habit number 2, begin with the end in mind. True both professionally and personally.
What's the best under $100 purchase you've made in the last month or so?
I bought a couple of books in the sales area because I think the parallels between fundraising and sales are a little better than a lot of fundraisers who haven't figured it out want to admit. The one that really is interesting is called high probability selling, and I'm learning a lot from that.
What's an interesting or fun fact about you that most people don't know?
I already briefly mentioned my early aspirations to be an actor, singer, and then there are the 5.5 years I spent in the United States Army. A lot of people, even people who've known me all my life, don't tend to think of somebody who would have both of those experiences on their resume and still be sane.
Desk or car, what would you clean first?
Desk. It's where I work.
Tea or coffee?
Coffee.
What do students never ask you that you wish they did?
Dan, how do you define planned giving? It gives me a platform.
What's the most common error you see nonprofits make?
Transactional fundraising. And I wish more of them would talk with me about the alternative.
And what charities do you admire or support?
Well, I like those that have immediate effects on people's lives. I like the Hever Project. I support my undergraduate and graduate alma maters, Gifts of Gratitude. And then I feed our profession. I support the Association of Fundraising Professionals and the National Association of Charitable Gift Planners. I want to feed future fundraisers that way.
And where can people find more information about your services?
Well, that's a wonderful question, Tim. Thank you. You can telephone me at 843-693-5719. My email is dan@thefrontlinefundraiser.com. The website is thefrontlinefundraiser.com. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. I really appreciate your time this morning chatting with you. It's been great.
It's been my pleasure, Tim.
Thanks for listening to this episode of How I Built My Fundraising Consultancy, presented by MarketSmart. If you like the show, make sure to review it in Apple Podcasts and pass it along to a colleague. I also wanted to remind everyone to visit imarketsmart.com/exclusive-podcast-offer to download the Engagement Fundraising audiobook for free. Once again, that's imarketsmart.com/exclusive-podcast-offer. Thanks for listening.